just got back from a visit to the Solomon Islands, a Pacific island nation that the CCP has been trying to infiltrate for some time. Has the CCP built its naval base there yet?
Well, they haven't built the naval base yet, but one thing at a time. They're certainly getting their claws into the place. They've already got them. And I'd say if on the current trend, if things continue, it's just a question of time till they've pretty much got the place. There's still some time left, but not much.
When you say time, how long are we talking?
Oh, a year and a half, maybe.
Until what? Like it's completely overrun?
Oh, I think until you have the Chinese with really control over the government, complete control over everything that matters, the levers of power, and it becomes a one-party state full of proxies, people who are bought off by the Chinese, and the Chinese get exactly what they want from the Solomons. That's what I'm getting at, is the total control over the government, the economy, just as I say, the press, the police, etc. And you will have a place that is dominated, as I said, by a one-party organization run by a dictator, basically. And the Chinese have it. And at that point, you see that other things start to happen, and that's probably when you will see the sort of the military component coming in. For example, there's something called the Pacific Island Games or Pacific Games that are coming up in November of this year. They're going to be held in Honiara and Solomon Islands. The Chinese have built the stadium, the facilities for this. And there's a belief that the Chinese are going to bring their security in for the games and that they just might not leave. So when the Chinese take over a place, it's often a fairly gradual thing that people, they notice it, but they convince themselves they're not really seeing what they're seeing. And that is what you're seeing in the Solomon Islands, is this gradual, say, takeover of the country. And it's via proxies, it's via Chinese business people on the ground. And the thing that greases it all is a lot of money under the table to a lot of people. And I say that is what we're seeing.
When you say it's only going to take another year and a half, how long have they been doing it so far?
Oh, it depends on where you want to count. But I would suggest, at least for the last 20 years, but in earnest for the fairly recently. For example, in 2019, the Chinese got the guy who was in charge of the government to change recognition from Taiwan to the People's Republic of China. The dictator, Sogavara, the elected dictator, he didn't exactly think that up on his own, but China was pushing for it. But have always been applying pressure, and it starts with a commercial presence, starts with the presence of really Chinese business people, a Chinese community that's very different than the one that had been established there for decades. But it's a new influx of people. This commercial presence leads to political influence, and ultimately it tends to stifle any opposition, any possibility of change. And then gradually you have the government cut deals to allow, as we've seen, potentially the Chinese military to come into the Solomon Islands to protect China's interests. And that's sort of how it works. But it's a steady process. You see it throughout the Pacific region, if not the world. And it follows that predictable sequence: commercial presence, commercial influence, political influence, and then that's always the last stage, but it's there, will be a security and military presence.
So the Solomon Islands is, it's a pretty small country. It's in sort of out in the middle of the Pacific, maybe not the middle. It's kind of, a little closer to Asia, but it's only got 700,000 people. I mean, why does the Chinese Communist Party care about this country?
Well, it's location. It's strategically located. And by a sort of military perspective, it's what you call strategic geography. Specifically, in this case, it's down in the Southwest Pacific to the east of New Guinea. It potentially isolates Australia from any sort of lines of communication, supply with the United States. It cuts Australia off from the rest of Asia if you go up north, but also using it as a place, an operating base. The Solomon Islands is a very good place from which to have the People's Liberation Army operate its own forces and come to dominate the region with a little effort. So it's very good, as I said, for isolating America from its allies and America's allies from America and the rest of Asia. But also you have to look at it as a stepping stone elsewhere into the Pacific, and one more sort of lily pad from which to gradually establish domination and control of the Pacific. In World War II, the Japanese understood this very well, and that's why they made a push to get into the Solomon Islands and did get in. They were preempted by the Americans landing on Guadalcanal, which is the main island. The Japanese didn't do it quite right. They didn't get there fast enough. They didn't go far enough. And if they had, and by that I mean if they had gone just a little farther, if they had gone a little down to the southeast and taken what is today Vanuatu, New Caledonia, they could have completely isolated Australia from the United States, made it very hard for the Americans to fight back up and win. The Chinese understand this. They understand history. They understand geography very well, to their credit, and they are patiently going about trying to establish domination. When I say patiently, that definitely describes it. But when there's an opportunity, they will push. And they saw that in Solomon Islands in 2019 when Prime Minister Sogavare got into office. And they have played that very well, very aggressively. And the thing to always consider with this, however, is that when the Chinese do make a push, and when they're influencing, you always have to ask, well, where's other people? Where are the Australians? Where are the Americans? Where are the Japanese even? And you go to the Solomon Islands and you fairly ask, well, now look, the Americans outsourced their policy to the Australians for 30 years. America didn't even have an embassy there until just a couple of years ago because the Australians had taken care of things. So they told us. After all, they would refer to this part of the Pacific as their patch. Leave it up to us. We understand things down here. Well, go to Solomon Islands and look around and go on the roads, go to the hospital. Just wait till the power goes out and ask, well, what exactly were the Australians doing? I'm not being mean, but I'm just calling it as it is. I would defy anyone to go and answer that question differently.